When I first started watching the Fallout TV show, I thought at the very least we'd get an enjoyable and compelling romp in the wasteland without any major consequences that would impact the series. That way it could still remain somewhat separate from the games, and future installments wouldn't need to concern themselves with the events of the show if they didn't want to. Boy, was I wrong. Not only does the Fallout show set up some incredibly vital plot points for the franchise, but some of them are so big that it's hard to see how Fallout's 5 and beyond could even avoid referencing the events of the series, and considering we're probably a ways out from the next Fallout game, unless Microsoft gives another one of their developers like Obsidian, for example, the green light to make another spin-off, which, please, it's honestly very likely that another couple of seasons of the show will occur before that time. In fact, Amazon and Bethesda have already announced that Season 2 is happening, building upon and adding to the already massive ramifications the first season set up. So in this video, we're going to talk about what those ramifications were, why they're so important, and how they changed the franchise going forward. So spoiler warning for the entire first season of Fallout. Over the course of Fallout's first season, the show continuously flashes back to the ghoul's previous life as the movie star Cooper Howard, who lived a pretty blessed existence in Los Angeles before the bombs dropped. Cooper's wife Barb worked for Vault-Tec, the company behind the franchise's eponymous vaults, and she roped her husband into essentially becoming the corporation's mascot. Because of Coop's connection to Vault-Tec, he was contacted by Miss Williams, a woman with intimate knowledge of what was really going on at the company. She wanted Coop's help on spying on his wife. Of course, Cooper was very reluctant, but when he started to realize that Barb was hiding more and more details about their potential life together in a vault, I get it, dude. If someone told me I couldn't bring my dog into the bunker, I'd take my chances on the surface. Coop ultimately decided to comply with Miss Williams' request. And what did he discover? In order to guarantee a return on its investment, Vault-Tec planned to kickstart the end of the world itself by dropping the first bomb. Up until this point in Fallout lore, it has been widely believed that it was China that dropped the first bombs on the US, which kickstarted the chain reaction of retaliations that led to the complete destruction of the world. However, it's entirely possible that Vault-Tec were the ones to pull the trigger. Before anyone could question who actually did it, it would have been too late. The world would have ended. Cleverly, the show doesn't explicitly show Barb pushing a big red doomsday button. We're simply left with the notion that it could possibly have been Vault-Tec. Just the possibility massively dials up Vault-Tec's villainous credentials within the Fallout lore, beyond being the company behind all the Vault's insidious experiments. And there's also so much of Cooper's history that we have yet to see. It's clear that between where we leave off with him in the finale and where we see him in the premiere as the bombs drop, a lot of time has passed, as he is now seemingly no longer a movie star and relegated to performing at kids' birthday parties. And the fact that Cooper is out on the surface when the world ends should give us pause to consider what has happened in that time. If Barb had prior knowledge of when the bombs were going to drop, wouldn't she make sure that Cooper and their daughter Janie were safely tucked inside a vault already? Even if the knowledge of what she was planning had ultimately separated the pair, it's hard to see how Barb would have let the bombs drop with her daughter at risk. Look, there are a million different variables at play that leave a lot of wiggle room for how Armageddon actually kicked off, and it's likely that the next season of Fallout will continue telling the story of Cooper Howard's past life. What all of this does reveal is that Vault-Tec is not only a bigger villain than we've ever previously understood, but they actually have plans in place for far into the future. While Vault-Tec has always been a big part of the games, and the experiments of the Vaults have been a core part of the gameplay experience, the company has never really been a direct antagonist in any of the titles. The Fallout TV show reveals that that is clearly on the table. The earliest major revelation the show makes is the destruction of Shady Sands. Shady Sands is a location you visit in both Fallouts 1 and 2. It's an above-ground settlement that sprung up in the post-apocalypse, and in all the settlements you get to explore in the games is the one that most clearly resembles a working society. It is a beacon for what is possible to rebuild after the end of the world. The cool thing about exploring Shady Sands between those first two games is that it even evolves in the second installment, becoming the capital for the New California Republic, or NCR, the closest thing to a functioning government in the Fallout universe. In the Fallout TV show, it's revealed that all good things do come to an end, and not only that, all good things come to an end at the hands of Carl MacLachlan. His character Hank McClane, a Vault-Tec executive, had blown the town to smithereens, towing the company line of kill or be killed. Vault-Tec's misguided notion is that if Vault-Tec is the only faction in existence, then it would mean the end of all conflict, which is the kind of stupid, short-sighted idea corporate management would totally come up with. Not only does this play into the previous point, that Vault-Tec are still very much around and still very much the bad guys, but it completely changes the political landscape of the post-apocalyptic United States. The New California Republic is one of the few major players left in the wasteland, and one of its major strongholds has been wiped off of the map. But it gets worse for the NCR. Believed by Lucy in the first episode to be a simple band of raiders, it turns out that Hank's kidnappers, Moldava and her Vault 32 imposters, are actually a part of the NCR. Moldava is looking for two things: a former Vault-Tec executive and a cold fusion cell. The former has a passcode that can activate the latter, and in turn, Moldava can supply power to what is left of Los Angeles and potentially beyond. When she finally has both pieces of the puzzle, the fanatical Brotherhood of Steel shows up to her outpost at what remains of the Griffith Observatory and decimates her forces. Now, that power is in the hands of the Brotherhood, another massive blow to the NCR. It's hard to see how the Republic is going to recover from all of these losses, and future installments set in this region, and depending on how far-reaching the power of the cold fusion cell is, neighboring regions will absolutely have to deal with the consequences. The most consequential shot of the entire first season of Fallout is undeniably its final one, where Hank McClane arrives on the outskirts of New Vegas. If future seasons of the show, or potentially future games, pick up this story thread, they're going to have to pick one of its game's optional endings and make it canon. In the game Fallout New Vegas, which takes place over a decade before the start of the TV show, there are 4 optional endings, not counting the DLC endings, and several of those endings have splintering outcomes, all based on which faction gains control of the Hoover Dam, which powers the city of New Vegas. The first option is that none of the major groups obtain it, with the player character the Courier managing to take out the 3 factions vying for the dam's control. In this ending, New Vegas can either fall into chaos as a power vacuum forms with the removal of its previous overlord Mr. House, or order can somewhat be maintained if the Courier is able to upgrade House's Securitron forces to corral the population. The other endings result in one of the 3 major factions gaining or retaining control of the dam: the New California Republic, Kaiser's Legion, or Mr. House himself. When Hank arrives at New Vegas, the city is seemingly derelict, a far cry from how it appears at the start of the game. While a lot could have happened in the 15 years between Fallout New Vegas and the TV show, if the city has fallen into disrepair specifically because of the outcome of the game, that narrows down the options for the canon ending considerably. Either the Courier liberated New Vegas without upgrading the Securitron forces, which resulted in a more chaotic outcome for the strip, or it was taken over by Kaiser's Legion, a faction that would go on to either murder or enslave the population of the city. The endings that result in a New Vegas that retains order are predominantly linked to Mr. House either retaining control of the settlement or the NCR incorporating it into its growing territories. The Fallout TV show could take this in a few interesting directions. Perhaps the NCR did indeed gain control of New Vegas, but the destruction of Shady Sands dealt enough of a devastating blow to its spread thin control that the city fell into disrepair. Or the show might want to take this opportunity to introduce a new faction with Kaiser's Legion, which would add some interesting narrative wrinkles for the series' protagonists. However things play out, Mr. House, the head of Robco that we see in the final episode of Fallout's first season, who managed to keep himself alive through technology for hundreds of years to end up as one of the major players in Fallout New Vegas, is almost assuredly dead. Now, future Fallout games might simply keep themselves to the East Coast and leave all West Coast shenanigans to the show. but it's hard to see how something like the activation of a limitless power source like the cold fusion cell wouldn't have far-reaching ramifications that affect the rest of the country and beyond. The Fallout TV show is a major expansion of the franchise's world and lore, and is clearly giving a shape to a series that has, for the most part, told anthological, disparate stories. When Fallout 5 does eventually come out, it would feel antithetical to what Bethesda and Amazon are doing with this series to not build upon it. Also, considering that some ideas were left out of the TV show because Bethesda was planning to use them for that next game installment, connective tissue between the two halves of the franchise just makes sense. If and when the games address the events of the show, you can bet that the aforementioned incidents will significantly impact those stories. For more on Fallout, check out all of our great videos, such as whether Fallout 76 is worth jumping into in 2024, or why Fallouts 1 and 2 deserve remakes, right here on GameSpot.